Today, let's examine Nick Carraway's ability as the narrator in F. Scott Fitzgerald's 1925 classic, The Great Gatsby, and analyze some of the drawbacks of having a character as the narrator. When the story you're reading is from the point of view of a character in the novel, often the protagonist, you're reading first-person narration. First-person narration makes frequent use of the pronoun I because, they're talking about themselves, or at the very least, what's going on around them. This style of narration gives us insight into a character's thoughts and feelings. Peripheral narrator is a first-person narrator who's not the main character. He or she gets to give us the lowdown and spill the tea on the true protagonist and antagonist, all while maintaining social distancing, like staying 6 feet away. So who is Nick Carraway? The Great Gatsby is told from the point of view or through the eyes of Nick Carraway, a Midwestern man who finds himself on the East Coast after World War I. Although Carraway comes from a wealthy family, he's descended from a duke. He leads a relatively modest existence. Compared to Gatsby's rolling estate, Carraway's cozy bungalow next door looks like a shack. This stark comparison between dwellings and, ultimately, lifestyles helps shape the way Carraway participates in the story and also how he narrates it. There's Nick's cottage and Gatsby's giant mansion. The Great Gatsby is narrated by Carraway, but the way he tells the story changes throughout the book. Many of Carraway's insights are described through the first-person point of view, where he references himself as he expresses his thoughts, feelings, actions, and observations. I lived at West Egg, the less fashionable of the two. Throughout the story, Carraway explains what he's doing and what he's saying, and occasionally offers us a little nugget of insight about what he thinks of Gatsby or the other people around him. The entire story, although told from Carraway's point of view, is really not about his own life. Instead, he describes his many encounters with Jay Gatsby, and at one point even shares Gatsby's origin story, something that Carraway never actually witnessed or experienced. For this reason, Nick can be considered a peripheral narrator, a narrator who's a part of the story, but is more of a bystander than an actual actor. Nick Carraway is physically present throughout the book, but he goes relatively unnoticed. He participates in major events in the story by going to parties or having illuminating conversations with characters who know or think they know Gatsby. Despite that fact, Carraway is still more of an observer than a participant. His existence as a character is not the main point of the book, even though he's the one sharing the story with the reader. It's also super important to remember that when a first person is narrating the story, they're somehow involved in the whole shebang. They're part of the action. They've got something at stake. Unfortunately, this means that they're not always the most trustworthy of folks. When we can't trust our narrator, we call them unreliable. And we don't just mean that they bail on plans, although, frankly, I would rather have Gatsby show up to my Roaring Twenties party than Nick any day. All right, go take the test or the quiz on the Google Classroom.